Now I have the pleasure of doing two things, presenting Wade Henderson with our award and introducing him to be our speaker. You have in your program a really long description of probably 1% of the work and things that Wade has done in his life. Wade's a leader nationally and internationally. He's spoken in Geneva, in Berlin, in Belgium. He was at and organizing the World Conference on Racism in Durban, South Africa. And he's been our friend and Fair Housing's friend from the beginning. He's included the National Fair Housing Alliance in many of these international conferences. He makes sure that fair housing is on everybody's agenda. He's worked with us on the 40th anniversary and the commission that had hearings in 5 cities and released a report under former Secretaries Jack Kemp and Henry Cisneros, calling for the removal of fair housing from HUD into an independent agency. And it's a goal we haven't given up on. Wade, at the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, he works on all issues: immigration, transportation, education. He works on criminal records, re-entry issues, religious freedom. He works on commerce, education, employment, and all of these task force report. We all report to him, and he'll give us direction and ideas, and most importantly, his support. Because when Wade speaks, Congress listens. I've been in meetings with Democrats and Republicans where Wade has said, "You need our votes. You need our votes when you come up again. You may not be up for re-election for 6 more years, but you'll need us." And we have a long memory. And I've seen people change what they were going to do because Wade reminded them of their civil rights obligations. Wade is our dear friend. He's worked on LGBTQ issues. The Leadership Conference has more than 200 members that deal with civil rights issues, from the unions to religious groups to groups who are atheist groups. The reason it's called a coalition is because he knows how to make us all work together, even when some of our ideas may or may not differ. Wade is a leader, and he's a friend. He's a dear friend of the fair housing movement. And the award we're giving you, Wade, is the Mondale Brook Award. Wade has the Hubert H. Humphrey Award that they give every year. And so there's so many young people here, they don't know that Mondale was mentored by Humphrey. And Edward Brooke was an African-American senator from Massachusetts. And one of the reasons this award's so important in giving it to you, Wade, is Senator Brooke passed away last December. But even at the very end, he was signing on to the disparate impact amicus brief that was moving forward in the Supreme Court. And I imagine you, Wade, 30 years from now, I'll be calling you going, "We need you to sign on to this." And he'll say, "Okay, send me a copy, let me read it, and we'll get it done." But Wade, you deserve this recognition for your hard work, your dedication, your devotion to civil rights. Wade was born and raised in Washington, D.C. He went to Howard University and Rutgers Law School, and his heart and soul is in this city. And he fights, as we all do who live in D.C., for statehood and equal rights. So Wade, come and join us, and we'll give you this award.
spectacular. Wow.
It says it was a year of turmoil, yet a year of hope, from 1968. Wow. And we're still working on this. Wade was at the signing of the 1988 amendments because he worked diligently to get those amendments passed. So he's done so much for us, and I just want you to thank him.
Shauna, thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll get this to your office.
Okay, terrific. Wow. Good morning, everyone. I don't know where to begin, guys. I have to say, Shauna, that was the most generous, probably excessive, but generous introduction I think I've ever received. And I can't tell you how honored I am to both be here this morning and to receive this incredible award. I can honestly say I knew both Senator Brooke and Walter Mondale. And your point about Walter Mondale deserves some reinforcement, because recently, when we made efforts to settle a fair housing disparate impact case in St. Paul, it was St. Paul. It was Senator Mondale, Vice President Mondale, who intervened at the last minute and made the decisive difference, along with an incredible mayor of St. Paul, Chris Coleman, in resolving what could have been the death knell to disparate impact as we know it. So Walter Mondale, even to this day, remains an essential figure in the fair housing movement. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you what a great honor it is to be here and to receive this award. I started my time in advocacy in the late 80s when I met a young and very plucky advocate from Toledo, Ohio, named Shauna Smith, who pushed me and others in D.C. to strengthen the fair housing amendments that were going through Congress at the time we met. And there were people whose names have long been, unfortunately, forgotten, who made significant contributions to what we know today as this enhanced statute for fair housing enforcement. Penda Hare of the Advancement Project helped to devise the actual legal maneuver between taking a case to court or taking it to administrative relief. That was Penda's invention. People like Althea Simmons, the great advocate for the NAACP, brought her remarkable skill of being able to take verbatim notes. She was a stenographer in an earlier life before she became a lawyer, and could read back verbatim what people had said in private meetings. It was a remarkable talent. So, they made a huge difference. So this meeting, this award, has such meaning for me, and I'm honored to receive it. Now, I have to say, Shauna, I thought it was a little unfair to both give me the great introduction, but also to put me behind ICE and Rashid Copeland. That was not fair, okay? ICE proves a point. Brother, I loved your remark. I just saw recently the great play, Turn Me Loose, about the remarkable Dick Gregory and his groundbreaking career. And you are further proof positive that in each generation, new voices emerge which speak truth to power and use humor as a device for doing it. Your story reminds me of a parable, which is that if you are not in the room, you can't possibly be at the table. And if you are not at the table, then you're on the menu. You're on the menu. So tell that to Mr. Chicken, because that's the way it works, okay? So, what can I say? And Brother Copeland, your poetry was just powerful. This effort to use poetry to highlight political insight. You reminded me of my greatest disappointment as a lawyer and lobbyist. I'm from D.C. My greatest disappointment is that I have been unable, along with a coalition of others, to bring the full rights of citizenship to the residents of the nation's capital. We are an anomaly when it comes to democracy in America. We fight to bring democracy to places like Kabul, Afghanistan, to Baghdad, Iraq, and we deny it right here at home on the Potomac. It's outrageous. And as a lawyer, it is my greatest failure. And I hope that as we pursue these issues going forward, your voice and others will help remind America of its obligation to its own. So thank you again for your great work, and you deserve, both of you, our compliments for the good work that you do. I was told that I had a few minutes to give a speech, so I'm going to do that. You'll regret it, Shauna, but hey, what the hell. And in any event, one point that I would simply underscore is the fact that the Leadership Conference sort of stands for the proposition that in coalition there is strength. So only in coalition are you equipped to meet the challenges of the 21st century if you are a social justice advocate. Only in coalition. Secondly, this work is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, if you are easily dissuaded and frustrated by impediment, then you're in the wrong business. I'm not saying you have to accept it, and no, you are not satisfied with the pace of change. But at the same time, you understand how the system works, and you use the system and the contradictions of the system to highlight the advocacy that we want to pursue. Now, I've been especially proud of the fact that the Leadership Conference also stands for the proposition that we are working to build an America as good as its ideals. As good as its ideals. Now, what does that mean? We have these great ideals, democratic ideals as a nation. Great ideals. Constitution 1787 sets forth the structure of our government and the value we place on individual citizens. And yet the struggle for citizenship has existed both prior to that time and since that time. And we are still on a path. We have not yet arrived. We have not yet arrived. The Supreme Court reinforced that principle this week in a decision on affirmative action called Fisher versus Texas. And let me say, it was a huge win, guys, totally unexpected. Because Justice Kennedy, for the first time, embraced a race-based affirmative action program, albeit one with a number of restrictions and limitations on how you could use it. But it stands for the proposition that inequality still exists in our society. You can't turn a blind eye to it. And the fact that we choose to talk about our current state of affairs as a post-racial circumstance because we do have an African-American president is delusional. We have taken ourselves too seriously about our accomplishments and failed to look at the underlying conditions of the people that we represent. So this award comes at a time when I'm, just pondering next steps for both me and the nation. I'm leaving this job at the end of the year as head of the Leadership Conference. I'm leaving the position, I'm not leaving the movement. I will continue pursuing work consistent with what we've done. But there are too many challenges that require a deeper dive than I can do at the Leadership Conference. And that motivates me to look for other venues and other ways of bringing about that change. Now, this fair housing movement, oh my God, I look at what we have accomplished together, and it blows my mind. It really does. This is about the century behind the passage of the first modern Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It was the act that sought to provide citizenship status to all people in this country, all citizens. The truth is, it was not self-executing. And so having said that, we've been struggling for a long time to make it real. 2 years from now, we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act, one of the most important civil rights statutes of our time. We'll also celebrate the 20th anniversary, or 30th anniversary, I guess, of the 88 Amendments, which really helped to change the statute. So we have a lot of markers on which to analyze, and that's a good thing. We also have some successes on which we are building. And let us give a note of appreciation to former secretaries at HUD, Sean Donovan, to Julian Castro, both of whom have helped to make affirmatively furthering fair housing the policy of the country. and have done so in a very effective way that helps to implement the Fair Housing Act. Phil Tegler of Prac and lots of others, as well as my colleagues at NFHA, have been involved in that, deserve a lot of credit for making it happen. I look at the disparate impact case. My God, the repercussions of that case go well beyond the individual application to fair housing. I want to lift up the Inclusive Communities Project. Betsy Julian, Betsy deserves a ton of credit, Kyle Williams, for what they've done. No, they did. And all of the coalition assembled in this room who, over a series of about 6 years, with cases going to the Supreme Court like Magna versus Gallagher, with a successor case going to the Supreme Court from New Jersey involving disparate impact, only to have it unexpectedly pull out a victory. Last year, what a remarkable set of accomplishments. And while I'm tipping out love, let's talk about our buddy Sarah Pratt. Where's Sarah? Sarah here? Sarah deserves a lot of stroke, guys. No, she does. She does. Sarah deserves a lot of stroke, and she has pushed the envelope from inside and helped to make a difference. So here's the bottom line. I decided to abbreviate my remarks. I have a written speech. I'm not going to give it. I decided to abbreviate my remarks because, truthfully, this is like speaking to family, I'm here among friends and family. I'm just going to be very straightforward and tell you what I hope we can do. So while we have had many accomplishments, guys, a lot to celebrate, the fact that you all are still in business and functioning at a very high level speaks to the incredible leadership of Shauna Smith and Lisa Rice and what you have done with this great network of advocates that you have. It emanates from the fact that, you all have made a commitment. A commitment. Is that Gustavo? Hey, brother, good to see you. So, all of that is important. But here's what I would say to you. There is still too much that is dependent on our ability to bring equal justice under law to fair housing principles. Too much is at stake. Where you live determines almost everything about you and your family. It determines the quality of education your kids receive. It determines your ability to pursue work. Because often, if you are too far from a job or lack public transportation, you're screwed. It determines the value of your home, which still remains our greatest asset. And while I understand the importance of affordable housing and rental housing, and I support that, I also support home ownership. The two are not mutually exclusive. And we need policies that reinforce that. So our job is to tell our friends and colleagues, including those in the administration with whom we love. We love Mel Watt at FHFA and his team. They do a phenomenal job. We love our friends in the White House who try to do good work. But let me say, we're not always on the same page. We are not always on the same page. So while I understand the importance of comprehensive housing reform, and I wish we could get it, wake up. Look at the toxic environment on Capitol Hill. You've got to be kidding. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And so in the interim, I can't afford, nor can you, to have the institutions that facilitate home ownership dismantled under some pipe dream that Congress is going to reach a comprehensive bipartisan solution. It's not happening. And so let's start talking, in a plain and forceful manner about what is needed. So that's part of it. And then my last point is this. Fair housing is tied to quality public education. It's tied to criminal justice reform. We have an important opportunity right now to pass a sentencing reform bill that could help shave off considerable time for individuals who have been sentenced to prolonged time in prison for drug offenses for which there was no violence. We're talking about non-violent individuals whose sentences are mandated, by mandatory minimums, which were created in a manner that struck a disparity on the basis of race. because of the prevalence of crack cocaine in minority communities. Pharmacologically, the drugs are the same. Scientists recognize that. For the first time, we now have a bipartisan circumstance that would allow us to move forward. We need to strike that deal and get a bill. It's going to require Republican and Democratic support. Fair housing advocates have an interest in this outcome. You cannot silo your advocacy to only issues related to fair housing. You do yourself a disservice if you look at these issues through too narrow of a lens. So you have got to deal with that. I would also mention, and then I'm going to stop, this question of payday lending, which is on the table, guys. There are a new set of regulations promulgated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, created with the brilliance of Elizabeth Warren, among others. And we have the possibility of actually regulating for the first time the financial equivalent of crack cocaine for the poor. Okay? This is, come on, I'm just being frank. Payday lending is the crack cocaine of poverty. It's the quicksand. Hey. It's the quicksand for the uninitiated. I understand that sounds hyperbolic, but you try to get one and pay it off in the requisite period of time when you're living paycheck to paycheck, making less than $15 an hour for your minimum wage job, living on a tipped minimum wage, living near a military base and dependent upon what Uncle Sam used to pay you or paid you. Those kinds of things make a difference. So my final point is that as we look to the future, as much as we celebrate the past, and this moment in time is very special for me, as I said, but I consider this a recognition both for work done, and I accept it in the name of the great coalition that helped to make it possible, and my staff. I love my leadership conference staff. Guys, I'd be nothing without these guys, and they're terrific, just as I think the staff of NFHA helps to make this coalition possible. So let's celebrate the staff, guys. Give them a little love here. We love the staff. And I would just urge you, in the spirit of this moment, recognizing the accomplishments that we have achieved together, but also recognizing the challenges that lie ahead, that you devote some time and attention to thinking about how you can strengthen this network to reinforce the goals in other areas that affect housing policy and that we share in common. And so I thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for this great award. And I thank you for being who you are, being the advocates that make possible the work that we do in D.C., that give us the ability to speak on behalf of America's coalition. You look around this room, it looks just like the country. And it's a real celebration of the accomplishments of NFHA. So thank you so much, and Shauna, I love you. Thank you. Guys, I want to tweet this stuff, so I'm going to wait for justice and send